I just wanted to go in and talk a little bit about, who I am, what I am here for, and, what is the thought that went behind into this session. So, first of all, huge thanks to the People Matters team to reach out and make me a part of this organization and this session here today. And when Esther asked me, what are you going to talk about? This was 4 months back. I had all sorts of things going on in my mind. I said, I'm going to talk about AI, I'm going to talk about robotics, I'm going to talk about how that will interact with HR. I had all these things in my mind. But then when I was reflecting back on it before the session, I'm like, let me talk about something which is very deeply personal to me, what has happened in the last 6 months. And I realized that my journey at Netflix is something which has been very personal to me. I joined them 6 months back after a fairly long stint at Facebook. And what I'm learning about this organization is fascinating me no end. One end of my job is to be in HR. The other end of my job is to be a social scientist. And so today, hopefully, I'll give you a little glimpse in what I've learned and something for you to reflect on, as this organization has grown. But like every meeting at Netflix, nothing starts before asking or sharing what is the show you're watching. So the two shows that I've loved watching over the last quarter have been 13 Reasons Why and Stranger Things. And the fascinating thing about these shows is that they don't have a massive star cast. They're actually really great drama, some really great content, and a lot of kid cast. So as you can see, the kind of work that is actually really resonating with our audience doesn't necessarily have to be with the big bang banners. Whenever I tell my parents what I do for a living, they're always really worried about how I actually get paid. So from checking Facebook all day to now watching Netflix all day. So my mother's still really amazed at how I make a living. But nonetheless, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the inner workings of this organization, which I'm getting really fascinated by. But I'll start with this quote, which is all about how an artist thinks. To be an artist, how can you not be an artist when you don't reflect the times? And when I look at HR as a job, and especially when I'm doing it at Netflix, I do consider myself an artist who is creating great people experiences for people who come and create content for all of you. And how can you do that without reflecting the times? So what worked for Netflix or what worked for Facebook or what worked for your organization today is not going to work in the future. And so therefore, it's really important that we continue to reflect our times and keep pace with what's happening within the organization, outside in the world, and really understand what's happening with our people. And hopefully, Thomas's amazing tools will really tell us what's happening in our mind, brain, energy, and we would have rated ourselves. So really, it is about reflecting the times, and our work can equally be as powerful as any other artist out there creating this. To tell you a little bit about what I've learned, I'm going to take you through a very short, quick journey of how Netflix has evolved as an organization. Because not everybody, a lot of people meet me and they're like, Netflix is a startup. It seems like a really cool, small company that you've joined now. And actually, Netflix has been around since 1997. It started off as, a DVD rental company back in the US. It was primarily a very US-driven company till the time that they actually started streaming outside of the US and went into online streaming. Post then online streaming days, actually there was a very big leap going from licensed content to actually creating original content. House of Cards is an example of content that was created internally by Netflix. And there are several series out there, and some I'm really absolutely excited are going to come out of India. We're already working with some great artists and some great production houses in India, and hopefully we're going to see content from some great storytellers coming out of this very country. But as you see, the leap the organization was making from one stage to another was very significant. And the last big leap that the organization has made, we opened to 190 countries across the world where we are streaming our content. And believe you me, content is something deeply personal. It's extremely cultural. So you have to understand the nuances of what it is to operate in a culture and not just be seen as a US organization trying to feed you US content, but to really create stories that resonate with everybody across the world. And so if you look at it across all of these pieces, what I'm learning is that the company uses culture extremely strongly to scale itself. But there's a dichotomy, sometimes I find. When you talk about scale and size, and I've worked with companies with very large sizes and scales in the past, one thing that comes to mind is you have employees come and tell you, you know what, I don't really want to work here because it's like super process-led. The bureaucracy kills me. All I need to do is upward management all the time. Really, there is no way in which I can actually embolden my creativity. And then what happens is, You start growing in scale, you start dropping in creativity. And that's one of the biggest fears that Netflix as an organization has. For an organization which is so, creativity is so fundamental, how do you continue to actually stay creative and agile when you grow in size? And for this, Reed Hastings, who our CEO, has really one mantra that he talks about to all of us, especially in the HR team: simplify as you scale. And just to bring the story closer home, let me give you an example. So and I'm increasingly getting amazed by what I'm learning. So when I walked in for my interview and I finished my interviews at Netflix, they were planning to give me an offer. So usually what you do, you send them your comp detail and say, this is what it is, they're going to make an offer to you based on that. Somebody says you'll give you 20% more, somebody says you get 30% more, whatever. So Netflix was an amazing organization. They told me, we don't really care what you make today. Can you tell us what your market worth is? And I'm like, how do I tell you that? They tell me, if you were to go look for a job outside this scale, how much do you think you'll make? I was amazed. I didn't know what to say because no one's really asked me that question. And I gave them that information. They figured things out. They gave me an offer. I joined them. But you know what they were trying to do? They were trying to determine the top of market compensation value for someone like me who's going to help them grow in Asia. And this is not something that we do only for people who join the company. We ask this of our employees. Interestingly, there are no comp ranges in the company. There are no pay ranges. And the reason we do that is that every individual has a personal top of market which reflects what value they bring to the company, and we want to be able to pay that. So I'm deeply fascinated with this kind of philosophy. I'm still learning. But the idea is it has been simplified to such a big core. And believe you me, it's been done over 3,000 people, so it's not something that's been only done with a few hundred or a few 50 people. This is something that we have scaled across the globe, across many countries. And the fundamental aspect of this is that there's a huge amount of employee trust that we place in people. Another example is we don't have any leave policies across, so people can decide where they want to go, how they want to go, what they want to do. There's no travel policy either. Now, the idea of it is some of this kind of simplification really bewilders people. They're like, how will you scale the organization? People are going to cheat you. People will not do the right thing. The idea is go down to the very root, and this is reflected in our culture deck, is hire people with the right kind of judgment. And I've talked to a lot of people at Netflix, and what I'm finding is that the exceptions, there are very, very few people out there who actually take advantage of the company. Because when you hire the right kind of people who want to work for you for the right reasons, this is not going to happen. So it's deep simplification. I can go on and on through the entire day and talk to you about it. But this is something that I remember Reed Hastings came and spoke when I was at Facebook at our global conference. And he's like, when you start creating a lot of processes across different things, what really happens is it dummifies people down. And so again, mind you, I'm not saying that process and workflows are not important, but it's really, really critical to figure out what's the end game that you have in mind. So simplification is one thing that we really believe in. The other big piece is radical candor. Your ability to stand and share the truth with each other all the time. The one big piece that stands out to me from my last experience was our ability to give each other huge amounts of feedback. We had a similar session like we have today. We were sitting on the podium here with our entire global leadership team. We asked them one question. Tell us about the significant failure that you had in the last 6 months. How did you handle that? And we got amazing answers. Reed actually put up his hand, who's our CEO, put up his hand and gave us the first example where he shared that he had made an organizational change without consulting some right people, and they did not land well. It was fascinating for me to sit in the crowd, like over there, and like, wow, this is the CEO telling me about the mistake that he had made. And there are several examples like that around radical candor. How it is reflected in our performance reviews is that we don't have performance reviews in the organization. We're not trying to use reviews to differentiate people or pay them. We basically encourage people to give feedback to each other all the time and create the culture of ongoing feedback. And again, this is something that we believe will keep us agile, active, and with the eye in the future. The other thing is when you are successful and you are big, the two big things that are extremely important is to keep your humility and really be vulnerable. This is an important point that I would make to anybody who's running a large company which is extremely successful, because you don't know. MySpace was successful at one point in time. They're not there anymore. A lot of Wall Street companies were out there making tons of money for their clients and for themselves are not there anymore. And one of the big reasons is for us to be able to stand back, and I've seen that happen in Netflix all the time, because Reed told us just in a couple of weeks back in a meeting, he's like, we really suck from how great we can be in the future. So, you have to stand there and feel like, you know what? In Facebook also, I remember there was this dialogue of 1% done. So this is extremely important that you put yourself out there as a humble person and a humble leader and as a humble function which is ready to make mistakes with all the pieces that you're going to deliver out there, but you have the ability to sort of bounce back from that. And one thing that I will feel that, this is a huge personal thing for me, and I think Thomas touched on this in his presentation, is about, narcissists interview really well. And, so they can sit out there and they can impress you with a lot of great things. Now, all the pieces that I talked about is, how do you bring in, great people in your organizations who are actually givers and not takers. Adam Grant has done some amazing amount of research and work in this area. I'd encourage you to actually go out there and check his TED Talk. And what I find is that in our organization, when you're driving high performance, a lot of time that gets misconstrued as, you're going to hire all these A people who are going to come in and they're going to do extremely well, but it's going to be a dog-eat-dog world. That's not the kind of organization that's really going to look to the future, and we have several examples of that. So, as Reed says in many of his dialogues, is don't hire the brilliant jerk. And how do you identify those brilliant jerks? Because believe you me, those jerks interview really well. And so in the last 6 months, one of the big things that I've been focused on is to create a workforce in Asia for us who are extremely talented but want to join Netflix for the right reasons. There are the people who are the givers. And these givers are not only people who are going to sit there and be kind and nice to you. They're going to give you extremely hard feedback. And Adam talks about this in his book. The concept is disagreeable givers. They're going to be the ones who, after this session, will come up to Esther and say, Esther, we loved your conference. Here's what we liked. Here's what you can do better next time. That is how she's going to take this conference to the next level, not with people who are going to come and tell us, we congratulate you, this was the best thing you ever did, but actually tell her about what really can she do better, what we can do better, what I can do better in my session next time. So I think that's the kind of piece that, that we all need to think about. These are the kind of people we need to bring in if we need to actually scale our organization and really create something that is extremely special. And again, I'm going to end here because that buzzer is telling me I'm in the red right now. I had 30 seconds to convince you. Hopefully the 15 minutes have worked. But everyone's invited to the party. And here's where I say that the biggest value that we have added to our culture transformation over the last 6 months, by the way, Netflix actually has revised its culture deck, its culture memo. And one of the biggest values that we have added to it is the culture of inclusion. So all of you, I'd love to see you come out there, give me ideas of what I can do better in my job, how can Netflix be better in the content that it creates. And we are in Singapore right now, but hope to be in Mumbai very soon. So I'd like a lot of you to come by, drop in, give us ideas, and connect, because I think this is a connection that is really going to help us scale ourselves as well. Again, this is a very small window into who we are, what we plan to do. And again, thank you for being on this journey and listening to me. I look forward to sort of connecting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great. So we're going to jump straight, and I have some questions myself, but I think I shouldn't be selfish and keep them. So I'm going to open it up.
I'm Sumit. I work with Accenture,
Yes.
And I handle talent strategy.
Yes.
So maybe this is coming from my drunk pictures all over Facebook, but just trying to figure out, there are certain people who only post certain aspects of their lives on social media. And so if you're running a personality tool to analyze them, it might give you a very warped view to their personality. And like you said, narcissists and psychopaths interview well, and I'm sure maybe they've got significantly cleaner profiles than a whole lot of us. Yeah. So how would artificial intelligence counter that, possibly?
Thanks, Sumit. Yes.
So look, I mean, all of the new signals that are emerging, much like many of the old methods for evaluating people, have imperfections. And with Facebook, you're absolutely right, a certain volume of data are needed to make accurate inferences. I think you can all go to the website that Cambridge University has for this. Is called Apply Magic Sauce. It's not a very catchy name, but Apply Magic Sauce. Log in with Facebook, and then you get your personality and even intelligence profile. I think you need to like something like at least 60 or 70 different groups, and under that, the profile won't be accurate, but it will tell you this is the accuracy estimate.
Yeah.
After that, it increases up to a certain point. And look, I think we often get fixated on what the imperfections are. Oh, what if I don't pay much attention when I join groups? Or what if I'm just nice to my friends and I like things that I don't care about? Well, those would represent the noisy components of the data, but there are a lot of valid signals. And I think this is about quantifying the elements that work and building on them, or at least knowing under what circumstances it works and under what it doesn't.
Thank you. Thanks so much. But I want to add on to Sumit's question about, can you really fabricate your identity? Because, you know, if there is technology, then that means the technology can be actually manipulated.
Our whole lives are fabricated. Your life, Esther, is fabricated. Mine is fabricated. We're here pretending, you know, that we are grown-ups working and that we care about entertaining the crowd, and the crowd is pretending that they're paying attention to us. Who we really are, you know, we would rather be in our pajamas watching Netflix.
I love that. I love that.
Not the French movies, but what we really want to watch. Although now that I know that you're not looking at my data, maybe I'll kind of relax.
Absolutely,
so,
indulgent.
It's important to understand that there's a serious component to this answer, because with traditional HR or talent tools, you're trying to predict work-related behavior. We're not saying that's your real you. But if I can predict how you behave at work, even if you tell me, actually, I'm faking it and I'm making it up, I don't care. I'd rather deal with what everybody sees at work, and let's face it, it's not really who we are when we are uninhibited or acting, you know. So I think we're in a high-stakes situation right now, and we're showing our bright side, and understanding that is enough. You can go to 10 years of psychoanalysis or therapy, or I often say, go and find yourself in India, but that joke doesn't work here, you know, it works in the Western world. But that's just metaphysical introspection. It's too deep. We deal with a much more superficial level of you, which is how you behave at work.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So we have a question for Shweta on your famous HR manual. So I think the question is very clear. All of us have read that manual, and I think all of us have referred to it and dream that I wish I could have this, but this will really not work in my company. So can you tell us more about it, and whether that's really working, or it's just a marketing thing for all of us to feel very jealous about Netflix?
Believe you me, it's not a marketing document. We recently changed some of it. It doesn't look pretty. It's a lot of text on some slides, so it's certainly not a marketing document. Somebody actually gave me feedback the other day, a new candidate. You're a great content company. Why don't you just make this document look better? So, but just to give you some context of how it actually came up. So, more than a manual, this was basically something that Reed Hastings, about 10 years back, when the company was transforming from a DVD rental company to a streaming organization, massive changes were happening in the kind of people we were bringing on board. And each time when he would go and talk to new people on the company, they would tell him 2/3 of them understood what the culture of the company was. 1/3 had absolutely no idea why they were there. And to which he actually spoke to Patty, who was the then HR head, and said, let's put together something which really reflects who we are as a company. I don't want people coming into the organization not knowing who we are. And that's where the birth of the culture document came in, which is now called the culture memo. And the fascinating thing that I find about that, and the reason it works, is because it never puts down policies, processes, or practices. It really tells you how the company feels about certain things. I'll give you an example. It actually says something like context over control, which basically means that we're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to set context so you can decide how you want to do your job. It even identifies things like, you know, good performance gets you severance. And that's something that appalls a lot of people, because they're like, what? This company is talking to me about severance. It's actually a culture document. And the reason actually that is really resonating with people is they feel like the company is being candid, honest, and fair at the very beginning, versus telling a lot of great stories about who we are as an organization, and when you actually come in and you find this is very different from what I actually expected. So Now, this is about 3 or 4 months back, we actually felt that it was time to revise our culture document. And we did that. It was a mammoth exercise that we undertook over the last 3 months, inputting great amounts of feedback from our employees. And we now have a new version. And like I shared in the presentation, we now have inclusion as a value in that document. So hopefully it continues to sort of resonate with who we are. And I find that we find great traction when we're hiring people in the organization, when people come read the deck and come and talk to us.
Thank you. Thanks, Shweta. I have a quick question for you, and I have one for you as well. Every time I look at organizations who are doing such an interesting work for their employees, and you were there in Facebook as well, and you know, you go to Facebook office and everything is free, and I had the privilege to go to your headquarters, and you know, the bars are free and the laundry shop is free and you get haircut for free. And I was like, oh my God. And then you really reflect about the revenue per employee, and you reflect back and say, well, yeah, actually that's why probably most of our companies in this room can't really provide those benefits. So is it you know, what is your advice for all of us? Because at the end of the day, we don't have the revenue per employee of Netflix, we don't have the revenue per employee of Facebook. What is it that we can do to create an awesome culture, which has nothing to do with free stuff? Because we can't really probably afford that.
No, I mean, great question, actually. It's very interesting when sometimes reporters used to come talk to me when I was at Facebook. They were like, I want to photograph your office. I want to look at the cafeteria. I want to look at your barista. I'd stop them and say, these are great things that we've been able to offer them as an organization because you know, we're doing well and we feel like our employees will benefit from it. But believe you me, that's not why they're going to stick working with us.
Yeah.
The reason they actually continue to work with us is because of the kind of challenging work that's out there for them, and the culture that's created which allows them to take the risks. So I don't feel it's all about the perks and the benefits.
Yeah.
Find out what's really, you know, valuable to people and why they want to come work for you. Because if you look at you know, organizations which are early stage, like a lot of entrepreneurial organizations which operate out of a very small room, they have little desks, but if you go and talk to those employees, they are the most liberated, they are the most happy because they are doing the work of their lifetime. So I think if we kind of focus and identifying in terms of what people really care about and help people own the values and the culture of the company, that's going to really help us. Because I really don't think that the free drinks or the bar or whatever is going to keep people. We're happy it's there, but that's not what's going to, you know, keep us alive.
Well, we will have to hope and we will have to dream that what you're saying is right. I don't know. But thank you so much, Shweta. So last question for you, Thomas. You said
we have a question.
Oh, you had a question? That?
We have been
Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
Do you
it's a group question.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Tej. I'm not a robot. All right. So the question is actually that it's a follow-up to the question you had, but more direct in the sense: is success an outcome of culture, or is culture just a placebo outcome of success? The reason I asked that is when I was looking at your presentation. Netflix is losing market share to Amazon Prime, and the culture at Amazon is exactly the opposite of Netflix. It's punishing, it's oppressive, whatever, ambidextrous, whatever it might be, right? So is Amazon actually stealing market share by hiring those brilliant jerks that you're...
Great question, great question. See, I mean, I can't comment on the Amazon culture. I only look at it from outside in, so it will be very wrong for me to comment on what they're like and, you know, what they stand for. But this is a very interesting question because somebody actually brought this up to read in one of the Q&A in our own company. And I think he gave a really apt answer, which I feel like will hopefully encapsulate what you're asking. It's not like you've heard a lot of these statements like culture eats strategy for breakfast, and there are a lot of these things out there, right? Now, I'm a big proponent of culture. I do believe it's extremely important, but culture and strategy have to go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. So if you look at Netflix, on one end, we give people the opportunity to be who they are, do their best work of their life, but it's an extremely focused company when it comes to their business, in terms of where we want to focus, what we want to do. And there are some very deep business results that everybody is accountable for. So there isn't like this entire party going on where people are like, let's just come to work, let's just figure things out. But there is deep accountability to make the company successful. So I believe it goes hand in hand. You know, without one or the other, at some stage in your company's life cycle, you will falter. if you don't have the strategy but you continue to succeed, it's like living on VC money, right? We know some of those companies, they live on VC money and there's a great culture out there, but at this poof, it goes down because they didn't have a strategy to figure out what their business is. On the other hand, we have several examples of companies which had great strategy but had terrible culture, which is really impacting. I mean, again, I can't talk about the inside story of Uber, but we've all come to see that sometimes when you're not looking at culture and how that goes hand in hand, Uber is an amazing product and an amazing company. I really hope they succeed, but it's a great example of where I think you need to bring the culture element in it and make it go hand in hand with the strategy for the company to succeed in the future. So I believe it's a balance. It's not one or the other. I hope that helps you.
Thank you. So I'm going to take the cue of culture, and I want, Thomas, if you can link culture with personality, and if you can give us some insight about many organizations in this room are scaling, they're also trying to simplify, but it's really about creating that culture. So is there a correlation between knowing what you're looking for? And now I'm really worried that you're saying that all of us are faking who we are, so can we actually really do this?
Well, I try not to repeat myself, and although I'm getting old, I have like 5 minutes of memory. So, I mean, culture is a product of the leader's personality, and that's true for Uber, it's true for Netflix, and it's true for Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And I think it's a brilliant question because, although it's unfair to make comparisons with an N of 2, and Amazon is a big giant, and Netflix is, a much smaller media company, it is also true, philosophically speaking, that some values are more adaptive than others. This is true for countries as well. I come from Argentina, where we want free drinks and cafeteria, and it's a high hedonism culture. And in Singapore, you have kiasu, and you work hard, and it's not that hedonistic. Well, look at the performance of one country and the other. So I think the message for organizations, I think, on a more practical level is, well, I think the big problem is most organizations, as they get big, they start losing track of what the culture actually is. They think that the culture is the stuff that they write on their websites and is still, in the DNA of the founders, but it's eroded and it becomes big. Climate surveys are still a good way to understand what the culture is. Crowdsource it, ask the people who work there, not the leaders or the marketing department, and then hire on the basis of ability, personality, and culture fit. If you can't spend time doing an in-depth evaluation of your culture and what the values of your candidates are, at least benchmark high performers on their values. And you will find that across the board, across the hierarchy of the organization, top performing people share some values, and those are the key values that are rewarded in the organization. That's why they stay longer, that's why they are more engaged, and that's why they perform to a higher level.
Yeah, wonderful.
So it shouldn't be as difficult as we think it is. Don't copy, okay, Netflix, wonderful presentation, I'm a huge fan, great, I should be doing this. No, that works for Netflix. Yeah. Work out who you really want to be and who you need to be, and just try to be the best possible version of yourself. Even if it's fake, That's,
fake
not
news
that
is going
relevant.
around.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much, and I really have to close now, but it's been fantastic. A big, big round of applause to both Shweta and Thomas. Thank you. Thank you so much.